Hi, everybody. Jim Crawford here with the Business of Law podcast. I think we're on podcast number 6. I'm here with Tyler, who is our trusty producer. Tyler, how are you?
Good, good.
I think we're going to get you into a podcast very shortly talking about some media stuff that we're doing, which is very, very interesting. And I'm with the infamous communications and director and CEO of the James Crawford Law Firm, Elise Crawford-Gallagher. Elise, how are you?
Great, thanks.
I thought that I would ask Elise to join us on this particular episode because it's a big one and it's something that's very, very important. But you know, what I'm thinking about here is this podcast really for our clients or other lawyers? And I think it's obviously both.
I think it's both, yeah.
You think it is? Okay, but I think a lot of lawyers can look at this and really kind of understand what some of the missing parts are. The topic today is basically client slash customer. Notice I'm using the word customer communication, and why some clients get upset and are not happy with lawyers. Imagine that. A client not being happy
Never heard
with
of that happening here.
with a client in the business world of lawyers. So I want to talk about it because it doesn't come naturally to most lawyers. It doesn't. It never came naturally to me. It's something I had to develop, and I'm still not perfect at it, but it's something that most lawyers just don't think about. And I guess you could probably call it bedside manner. Maybe that's what it is, just like a doctor. And a lot of doctors don't even think that bedside manner is very important. But it is in today's world as far as the law world with clients. Clients are more and more sophisticated about understanding and demanding more return for their money and what we're doing. Gone are the days as far as lawyers just saying, sit down and shut up and I'll get you to the finish line. It doesn't work like that anymore. It really just doesn't. So, and rightfully so. So, I want to talk about some of the do's and don'ts for lawyers in this situation, and also what we do here, and what I've taught, and my other senior lawyers and VPs have taught, and you've taught to some of the junior lawyers about how to interact and how much we value that interaction and that relationship with the client. So what's your initial thoughts on that?
So the perfect client life cycle, which you've talked about before, I truly believe is one of the most innovative concepts of that has been brought forth in the legal community, that you've brought forth in the legal community in the last 30 years. The reason is for all the points you just made, which is truly putting the client first. I saw growing up, I saw you doing that day in and day out for your clients. And that idea of service, I think, has really dwindled among professionals in the last 30 years. And that's something we really stand behind and want to emphasize in our training for all of our legal staff. So I'm excited to talk about it today because it is something I really believe that we are pioneering in this industry.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, the perfect client life cycle, we'll jump into that a little bit, and we've jumped into it in other podcasts. But I do think you're right, it is innovative, but at the same time, it's really just capturing basic thought process and basic personal service concepts that you and I would want if,
Absolutely.
in fact, we're on the other end of the service. I mean, we always ask ourselves, I ask myself every day, and that's just the absolute truth, would I come to my firm to be represented? Would I represent myself if I was another person? And I'm going to say, yeah, I really, really would. No question about it. But, that's for other people to judge as well. We'll see. So I think that what I want to talk to, and I think this is going to help other lawyers talk about, is how to communicate. And what does communication mean now? Because we talk to lawyers, and I know lawyers coming out of law school, even seasoned lawyers that have been practicing for 10, 20, 30 years, their idea of communication may be totally different than what is really needed to be effective in the community. If you were a lawyer and you really are not practicing a high-profile practice, you maybe have a small client base. You may not care a whole lot about how you communicate and what you do, but which is wrong, by the way. You should. But if you are a lawyer, and I don't care what type of practice you're practicing in, you should care dearly about how you communicate. You know, the basic stuff. You have texting, you have emails, you have, in-person type of communication. You got phone calls. You've got, I guess there's still U.S. letters that can be sent. We still do that occasionally in some cases. That's communication. But clients now really want to be kept up to date, not by the minute, but pretty frequently.
Yeah, and I would even go deeper. It's not only communication, it's relationship development. And that is something that lawyers struggle with, because you want to communicate, this is what I'm doing for you, this is how I'm going to get it done, just very basic things. But you always emphasize to our attorneys the counselor part of the attorney title, and that is very important, is emphasizing the importance of relationship building within the client lawyer relationship.
Well, it is, but if you go back to the basic concept, so Tyler, if you come to me as a lawyer and you're asking me about your legal issue, what is the fundamental basic thing that we need to do to protect you and to represent you? It's basically evaluate your case. And here's where a lot of lawyers get lost. They think that because they, in their head, or maybe in just a piece of paper in a file, that they figure out the case, they know how to handle the case, they know what the roadmap is, they know how to handle Tyler's case, and they think that's enough.
It's not.
They think that's enough.
It's not.
And so we forget that the client does not have an idea about what is going on. They may have a general idea, but they really don't. So what we teach here at the firm is on day one, from the day that the sale is made, and we call it a sale, not necessarily just a retainer. Consultation and retainer. It's a sale because that effective communication and that effectiveness as far as being there for the client has to start from the minute we get involved in the case. So we have to start talking to people about what's going on. And I talk to many clients, and I break it up by the perfect client life cycle, but also by innings. So many times, if you talk like a baseball game, right? Or you could do football quarters or whatever, but in a baseball game, when the client comes in, they're in need of a service. They need your help. If I go to the doctor, I need their help, right? If I go to an accountant, I need their help. If I need to go buy a pair of shoes, I need somebody to sell me the correct shoes. So they come to us and they need our help. And everything's great. The client is in need. The client wants to pay you money. The client is in a position where they're enthusiastic and the lawyer's enthusiastic. And the basic message is that I can take your money and I can solve your problem, or at least work on your case. Right. As a lawyer, we can never say, well, we're absolutely going to solve your problem. But we can say that we're going to give it our damnedest, right? So that's basically the top of the first inning, right? That means basically that everybody's really enthusiastic. What happens is that after the first or second inning goes by, monies have been exchanged. And by the way, what are the two things that cause the most problems in most law firms?
Communication and money.
Absolutely. So by the end
any relationships, marriages, they're always like.
Well, this is true. This is true. But so by the end of the second inning, the lawyer is still living in the world of, well, we talked a couple weeks ago. You know what I told you. Right. Meanwhile, the client, the problem they have is with them. No, hasn't gone away. And it's like every day, I haven't seen my child or my this or that or whatever the hell the issue is.
Still in
right?
his marriage, yeah.
Still a problem. And we try to explain and blah, blah, blah. So what we need to do is a perfect client life cycle, which is really an inning by inning approach. Okay? Inning by inning. So what I like to do is I will sit down with the client and I will try to take control of the scenario. You tell me what you need, and then I'm going to take control and I'm going to push you in a direction. But here's the thing. We got to set some ground rules. What are the ground rules? Number one.
Of the perfect client life cycle?
Well, of the communication.
Empathy.
True. Very true. They have to feel like we give a damn, right? There used to be an old lawyer friend of mine who, I won't mention his name, great guy, but he's no longer with us, but he practiced law for 40 years. He used to say to clients, I will become extremely concerned about your case the minute you pay us. And that's great, and it's kind of funny, but it's kind of true, but this is what we do. But yes, you do need to have empathy. What I'm referring to basically is a understanding about how communication occurs. Tyler, should you be calling me every day?
No.
Okay. If I don't tell you that, how are you going to know that?
No.
You're not going to, right? It's not going to be a situation where they intuitively figure out how to communicate. It just doesn't fall out of the sky, especially when they're under pressure and they have a life decision that they need to make sometimes on a daily basis that is affecting them. So teaching them how to communicate is so important. And so we want to effectively teach a client how to communicate with us.
Right.
And in today's world where everybody communicates with phones and texting and things like that, it's so difficult. But I do advocate for those uses at times. So teaching the client to be able to express themselves and check in different times is so important. I would, for example, Tyler, if you were my client at times, I would say, do not call me. I will call you at this particular time. Now, if I don't call them back and do it when I tell them I'm going to, then I broke my word. That's a promise. My goal is to not have to have a client trying to track me down,
right,
and to reach.
It's setting expectations.
Setting expectations, and also a relationship that they trust me based upon what I'm doing. So I will forcefully say, do not do this, do that, and create that understanding. Now, if you just simply, like a lot of lawyers do, say, don't call me, and nothing's getting done, and it's
right.
the second, third, fourth inning, then that's a problem. And that's what happens. By the third inning, fourth inning, because the court system is not necessarily very quick, the client's thinking, well, it's the fourth inning, it's been 2 months, nothing's happened, the same thing,
right.
But yet then they've spent this money that I gave them, and now they want more money, but nothing's happened. And that's where the effective communication comes in about what has to happen and what doesn't, as far as that's concerned. That's the perfect client life cycle. So in essence, what we're doing is we're teaching people when you need to spend money, when not to spend money, what's going to be effective, what isn't going to be effective. And we are interested in trying to get to the bottom line to be successful for clients in that situation. So I'm going to throw out a couple of do's and don'ts in this situation.
Great.
I want you to comment on it, okay? So I think let's start with the don'ts, okay? Lawyers, any lawyer, I don't care how long you've been practicing, 10 minutes or 10 years or 10 decades. Do not do certain things that I'm going to talk about here, because if you do, it's going to cause you a problem and it will never end properly, okay? Do not avoid your client. Do not put it in the back of your mind. Do not communicate at all. So many times we get the sale and we think we have the client, and then, well, we'll talk to them later on. So it's a great first inning, but then all of a sudden, the second, third, fourth inning, and there's no communication in that way. Do not put yourself in a situation as a lawyer where you assume the client understands what's happening. You have to write emails and you have to talk to them about what's going on. They don't know. All they know is it's not working properly. So sometimes you have to be a lawyer and you have to say, this is what's going on and this is not what's going on. So don't ignore that. Don't put yourself in a position where you assume the client understands what's going on and not going on, okay? Don't misrepresent. Don't tell a client, I'll get back to you sometime, and then not do that. Always be by your word. Now, how do you do that? One of the ways that I've always been effective with it is that I have a diary system. Your LA, meaning your legal assistant, or your secretary, or whoever's working with you, so they should have their own diary system. But you should have your own diary system as well, so that you're always effectively communicating with the client. Okay, and I don't mean every 15 minutes, but there are some cases for a while in the first, second, third, fourth inning that you may have to call that person once a day or once every
Right.
other day. You may have to do it.
Right.
So don't ignore that probability. Here's a big one. Don't underestimate the emotional level of the client as far as their need to be successful in the case. So many times, we were able as lawyers to digest the case, function, and do what we need to do. And even though the client's not throwing chairs out a window, we underestimate their emotional level and how they're handling this. So what's going to happen is, naturally, when they're sitting there 8 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night, they're waking up, the problem's there. What are they doing?
Stressing.
Stressing.
Thinking, is this attorney worth all the money that I'm spending? Yep.
And they're going on the internet, they're talking to other lawyers, they're doing this and doing that. That's not fair to them.
No.
It really isn't. And they need to feel comfortable with what you're offering them. So do not underestimate their emotional level of how important it is to them. You have to match that.
Right.
And not just once in the first or second inning, but continually throughout the case.
Yeah, our ethics attorney, James Dickerman, and I have been training our newest attorneys in the first client meeting that they have. We call them the kickoff meeting. And this is the meeting, usually it's an hour and a half long. We don't train for that long, but the attorney sets expectations with the client, creates a roadmap letter, acts as counselor for the client, etc. And what I have told the attorneys as we've trained them in this is not the field to be in if you don't like confrontation. You are not going to succeed here if you think that you can push off negative confrontations or thinking that, oh, this client really is annoying me, I don't feel like getting back to them, or, oh, I can see a little issue and I'm just going to sweep that under the rug. It's going to eat you alive if you do that. I mean, all the do's, all the don'ts that you just mentioned there really require attorneys to take issues straight on. When they whether it's a money issue, a communication issue, a lot of problems with communication can be solved if they're addressed right away.
I agree. And part of the issue of that is that we get frustrated as attorneys because,
Sure.
Well, I've told the client 5 times. We have to understand that they heard us, but what they're really asking you when the second, third, fourth, fifth time is, are you sure?
Right.
Because nothing's happening here.
Right.
So they're not asking you the same question a lot of times. What they're really asking is, come on, can something else be done here?
Right.
That's really what they're asking. So I think it's fantastic, and I agree. We do a lot of training here, and in law school they teach law, right, and they teach a lot of good things. But we teach our lawyers, our senior lawyers, our VPs, our managing lawyers. We teach the junior lawyers how to practice law effectively. Now, I'm going to say something else I think is very, very important, and this is something that goes into what you were talking about. One of the don'ts is do not assume that you won't be tested as a lawyer by your client. You will be tested almost every time. Now, I don't mean they're going to put a quiz in front of you. Can you pick A, B, C, or D as far as what's the right answer? You will be tested every time you talk to them about your skill and ability, your emotional level of how much you're into the case. Do they still feel comfortable and confident that you can get the job done? And it may be difficult. It may be something that you don't have the energy level to do at a certain day, but you have to do it because we have to match their level of intensity because they're
Right.
living the problem. We cannot match their level or go below their level because that will never solve their issue. I tell our lawyers, we are not a process-pushing firm. We are a problem-solving firm. As a lawyer, the most effective lawyers in this country are lawyers that solve individual problems. Okay, so that's some of the don't do stuff. Let's talk about some of the do's.
Great.
Obviously, you want to communicate with your client. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean every minute? Does that mean every 15 minutes? Are all clients rational? Are they going to listen to you? What do we do there?
Well, I think it really goes back to one of our core philosophies, which is everything is sales. In the legal field, you're selling your client when they first retain you. You're selling them when you are communicating in that initial client meeting. You're selling the court when you're in front of the judge. You're selling them when you hope that they return to you for their next.
And everybody
issues.
thinks that's a bad thing. By
No,
selling,
it's
right?
not. Selling is relationship development. Selling is saying, I can take care of this for you.
Right.
Rely on me. Trust me. I can do this for you. I can be your advocate.
Yeah. So I think what you're saying, and I agree, is communicating and communicating effectively are two different things.
Yes.
If you are communicating just kind of de facto to try to, I'm reaching out to the client and nothing's happening, that's not going to give them a warm and fuzzy feeling. And by the way, I'll say this. We can't solve every problem with a client, and we can't pretend to do that. But what we can do is make them understand that we are going to match their level of intensity, their level of desire, and feel their pain as far as what has to be taken care of to be successful. So communicating effectively is different than just communicating. I see so many times lawyers say, well, I just talked to her last week. And yet the client's calling and complaining because nothing's happening. It's something that's really, really weird. I think you've used the word relationship. How many people really have an effective communication relationship? How many people? Not just
I don't
lawyers,
know, but I mean, 50% of divorces, marriages end in divorce. So I don't extrapolate that.
Yeah, I think that there's so many times I'll give you an example, like with our controller in our accounting department. For many years ago, they were using accounting principles and accounting thoughts, and I'm talking about practical common sense, and we're like talking over each other, we're under each other and around each other. It took a long time to develop the vocabulary that is needed for us to be effective, and you have to develop that vocabulary and that understanding with the client. Once you do that, it goes a long way. So effective communication. Now let's get down very briefly into the nitty-gritty about what does that really mean.
Sure.
I'm going to tell you right now, lawyers who are listening, okay, and clients, you're probably going to shake your head saying you're damn right. You have to talk to that client frequently. You have to talk to that client frequently. This is not a 9-to-5 job.
No.
Okay? If the client calls you 8 o'clock at night and it's something that's important, you've got to talk to them. I am sorry. Or you tell them, I'm busy, I'm eating dinner, I'll call you back in an hour.
Right.
Now, what you have to do is, if they call and you say, listen, is there any update at 8 o'clock? You can say, no. That's not the way we talked about this, and you're not going to ask me just for an update at 8 o'clock at night. Basically, but if it's an emergency or something important, you have to let them feel like they're part of what you're doing. So many times I've been very, very effective over the years when I use other people to help me communicate. My LA, my legal assistant, would be the ones that really understand and know the clients probably more than me in a lot of ways. They become best friends. They will call them, they will field the call, they will ask how you doing, how's the family doing, what's going on, and that's something that really becomes effective. Sometimes it's an everyday communication. Sometimes it's twice a day. Sometimes it's 5 times a day if you have an issue going on. You have to communicate. This is not just pay your money, walk away, and have a nice day, and I'll see you in court in 6 months. This has to be a hand-holding, communal scenario. What do you think?
Well, I think that's one of the strong suits of our firm is that you don't just get an attorney, you get an attorney, discovery specialist, legal assistant, and clerks behind you to move your case forward. Not every legal firm has that, and you're not going to be just talking to your attorney. You will be talking to your legal assistant as well frequently. And I agree. Attorneys, it's hard for them to remember that we are just sitting there twiddling our thumbs as clients, waiting to hear from you every single day. It's on top of their mind. I mean, people spend money on weddings, houses, cars, and then this is probably their biggest expense, whether it's divorce, custody agreement,
in their life,
etc. Biggest expense of
besides
their life.
a car or
right.
a house or whatever.
It's right up there.
So they're
so it's up there. I mean, this is something they're mulling over and over again, and so attorneys have to start with that assumption, as you said, that the client is at a very high emotional level. This is, attorneys, you get jaded that you just are dealing with these types of things every single day, meaning custody agreements and divorces, but this is a person's first divorce or first custody case, and it's a huge deal to them.
I agree. So that's very important. So I'm going to move on to another do's. When I say communicate effectively, you have to communicate with the client about the law and their facts. You have to explain to them what's going on. After
Be a
all,
translator.
You really do.
Yep.
And it's really because that's what they pay us for. They pay us to interpret the law, to find a law, find an issue, and apply it to their facts. It cannot just be, well, the next thing we do is this, the next thing we do is that. Well, we got to wait for this or that, or the chances or this. No, you've got to make chances. You've got to create opportunities. You've got to think outside the box, okay, for that client. And if I open a file on any one of my lawyers in this office, and if I can't find or see a roadmap in the emails and the communication where I understand everything about that case, then I'm not happy.
No.
I'm not happy.
It's not a good day.
Yeah. You have to understand what's going on there. And we owe that to the client.
Absolutely.
So if you come on into me, Tyler, and it's a case, I'm going to tell you, well, this is a problem, that's a problem, this is good and that's bad, and this is the reason why. And we get into the detail a little bit. One of the things that I have always wanted to do, and I think one of the things we're striving to do, and I think we're very effective, is creating and knocking down the barriers that people have in order to try to communicate with a lawyer. It's so scary for a client to do that, to contact. That's a good point. Yeah. Because it's the way they used to think about doctors 150 years ago. They wouldn't go to doctors because they thought they were the treatment was worse than the cure was worse than the actual disease. They were butchers. They would think about, and many times people think like that about lawyers. I'm not going to this lawyer. They're going to charge me this. They're going to charge me that. Next thing I know, I'm doing this and doing that. That's why we need to have sound discussions about where we are and what's going on and what the proper roadmap letter we do is for the client. Okay, and that involves the perfect client life cycle. So you have to effectively communicate with the client as far as making them understand what's going on. Okay. Third, with the do's, bring the client in. Have a cup of coffee with them. Bring some of their family in. Okay. On the 5th, 6th inning, nothing's really happened yet. We've done a lot of things underneath that are going to help us be successful. Discovery, and they've paid money, but we don't see an end result yet. Bring the person in. Look them in their eye, okay? Not just a text or an email. Look them in and explain to them what's going on. I'll tell you a quick story. I'm not going to mention any names, but there was a client I had years ago, and this fellow was going through a tough time. He had several children, and he was trying to get divorced. His wife actually wanted a divorce, and I'm not going to get into the details about the divorce, but she wanted custody, he wanted custody, and she was driving him crazy. And I tried everything to try to calm him down. I mean everything. Brian, this, I call him, he'd call me, and I said, okay, enough is enough. I said, get off the phone. I said, what time do you get off work? He said, get off 5 o'clock. Meet me at the office. So he came in the office, and I looked at him and I said, I've got the perfect solution for you. And he said, what? I said, follow me. We went down into the garage, and in the garage of my old office, I used to have a punching bag. And this is the honest to God truth. He would come, I'd hold the bag, and then he'd hold the bag for about 45 minutes. He punched the shit out of that bag, and, it was like, okay. And then he asked me, are you charging me for this? I said, you're damn right I'm charging you for this. That's the best consultation you've ever had, okay, as far as that's concerned. But, you have to be innovative with clients about how it is. Bringing people into, we have our Friday feast. Come on in and sit down for a minute. We'll talk to you, meet with the team, and do this. Okay, have some coffee. If somebody's stressing 11, 12 o'clock at night. This is a profession. This is not a job. Any lawyer who works for us, they think it's a job, they're not going to be working for us very long. They buy into what we're talking about, and it really, really is important. So I could go on and on about the communications, the do's and don'ts, and there's a list of probably 20 more things. But the bottom line with communication is that it's you have to get into the micro part of it. This is not, I communicated, put the file down, moving on to the next. No, you have to feel it, touch it, live it, be part of that person's life. Now, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic about it, okay, because there is a Mendoza line. You're a lawyer, okay, you're not a therapist, although we are sometimes, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. And we have a lot of people we refer people to for therapy and divorce coaching and things like that, and even custody situations. But you have to get into it. Put yourself in the position of the client. You have to understand where they're coming from. If you do that, young lawyer or older lawyer, I promise you, you will have a client probably for a lifetime. Mm-hmm. I have clients who come back to me for decades. Mm-hmm. They want me, not because I'm a great lawyer, but because of the time and the relationship I developed with them. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Here's another secret. They hated me at times. All they did.
Just like kids.
They hated me at times. They'd look at me sometimes, and I would actually holler at them. But you know what? And there's a couple times people holler back at me. That's okay. That's okay. We want to keep it professional. This isn't like a shout-out session, but it's also develops that relationship, okay? And a lot of times it will get us to where we need to be. Any final thoughts?
You mentioned empathy, clarity. I think the strongest communicators I've seen have a method of confirming that the person they're communicating to, in this instance a client, truly understands what they're saying. So asking them to repeat it back to them, or saying, so let's talk about XYZ, tell me again, are you happy with what we're doing? Or, confirming that the person truly understands what's happening. Because you could think that you're communicating really well all you want, but unless that someone confirms verbally to you that they understand what you're saying, how do you know that you're actually communicating?
That's a fantastic point. There was an article in the Washington Washington Lawyer magazine a couple weeks ago that talked about how to effectively communicate with clients. And the whole thing with children in school, how some kids are able to breathe in and digest information by either reading, audio, visual, whatever it is. It's the same thing with clients. I think that's what you're saying.
Right.
And just because you tell a client 5 times doesn't mean that they really get it. Sometimes they're desperate and they really can you tell me again? Can we please get this done? So I agree with that, and it's something that you need to figure it out. As a lawyer, you need to figure it out, because the best lawyers are the best communicators.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
In a courtroom, obviously, I'm not telling anybody something people don't know, but in a courtroom, but it's worth saying over and over again. And the title of this podcast is Client, Communication. And yes, no joke, Jim. It's important, but it begs the getting down on your knees and really digging down deep to get to where it is.
When we hire attorneys here, we put them through 5 interviews. But when they come into the office physically, they go through 4 different interviews, and each interview is with a different person. Each person focuses on a different topic, legal acumen, cultural fit, etc. And one of those topics is communication. We believe in communication so much that we focus a whole 45-minute conversation only around communication skills when we're interviewing someone. Yeah. And people are always surprised when I say, hi, I'm going to talk to you today about your communication skills. We're like, what do you mean?
Little different
it is
interview.
different.
Right.
It is. But so I don't think it's obvious to many attorneys how important this is. I think it's a really important topic for us to discuss.
Well, that's great. So to wrap it up here a little bit, and we'll have other podcasts to get into some more detail that I think are really important. Again, it's communication and it's about money. Okay, money's a different aspect, but they tie in with each other because people want service. So anyway, Elise, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Hopefully it's helped. If it didn't help, at least it's a great discussion and at least get you thinking about these things. There's no right or wrong, but again, we're in a service situation. We service our clients and we have to do the best we can. They pay us money, and as a professional, we have a duty to do what we need to do. So I will see you next time. Till then, over and out. Have a good one. See you then.